Hello, welcome to the GRE Get the Power of Confidence only with the GRE Revised General Test webinar. I welcome you to Test Prep Week on behalf of College Week Live. My name is Michelle Hampton. I'm Associate Director of Global Client Relations for ETS, the makers of the GRE test. We also make the TOEFL test, and for those of you who had a chance to watch that webinar that I gave, but you still have some questions about TOEFL, please know that you can view it on demand at this time at the College Week Live website. Right now, let's focus our energies, though, on the GRE Revised General Test that you need to take in order to get into graduate school. What we're going to cover today in our time together will be what you need to do to get started and register for the test, what to expect on test day itself, information we think you need to know to be successful about the GRE Revised General Test, how to get your scores and send them to institutions that you're considering, also tools to help you prepare so that you do your very best on the test itself, and ways to make your application to graduate or business school even stronger. So many students have discovered that certainly in the past 3 years, the GRE Revised General Test has now become accepted for entrance to business school, for MBA programs, as well as for graduate school. You'll find that you can use it for doctoral programs, fellowship applications, specialized masters, and of course, general master's programs. The scores for a GRE Revised General Test are valid for 5 years from the day that you take the test. We want you to be confident in the scores that you're presenting, so there are certain things we think that are important to share with you today. We'll tell you where you'll be able to use those GRE scores. We'll describe the test for you and how it is a much more test taker friendly or developed and designed test, but also the way in which you'll be able to utilize your particular skills and test taking strategies in taking the test. And we'll also help you in knowing how to make sure that the scores that you are most proud of are what you share with the institution. So let's continue on. Now, when we talk about getting started, these are the important things you need to know to begin the process. First, you want to make sure that you register for the GRE Revised General Test. That's very important because that registration starts your record with us, starts your registration profile, the location where your scores will be able to be viewed, where you'll also go to send your scores to an institution. You're actually creating a MyGRE account. So, for those of you who are at this point just considering going to graduate school and maybe aren't ready to take the test, you can still create your registration profile at this time. It lets you do that whether you've picked a date or not. But for those of you who do have a date in mind and know you want to take your tests, by registering as early as possible, you'll be able to pick from your preferred test dates and locations and the time to take the test. It also will allow you to build in enough time to prepare or practice before the actual test day. You can do all of this at ets.org/mygre to create your MyGRE account. You also want to use the account, as I said before, to view your official scores online for the entire 5 years that they are available. But you'll also be able to take advantage of a free service that is very helpful that we call our GRE Search service. That will allow graduate programs around the world to see the kinds of characteristics you're looking for in a program, and if they match those needs, they then are able to communicate with you and help you consider their school. So let's look at some important registration tips that you need to consider. Each country has its own special official ID requirements for testing. We do realize that not every student is taking the test in the same country, and our website does help to give you some general information about that. we're going to take a look at some of the additional information here. Oops, sorry. Wanted to make sure I was getting everything out for you. We're also going to take a look now at that registration process. So, for example, the last name, Ferdinand de Cordova, would be entered as Ferdinandez de Cordova, all together with no spaces and no accents. It's important that your registration documentation matches what you have in your registration profile as your spelling of your name. You'll also find that it is important for you to use the first name or given name that appears on your documentations, not a nickname or what your family usually calls you. In your pre-registration checklist, what you'll want to do is remember certain things that are important. Your identification documentation is essential. You want to make sure that the name that appears on your official documentation for identification matches the name you use when you register. That will also help your university make sure that they're looking at the documents for the correct test taker. Failure to comply with that, producing identification documents that don't match the name that you registered under, may prevent you from being able to take the test on the day that you show up to the test center. And we want to avoid that at all costs. So make sure you review the GRE Information and Registration Bulletin when we talk about the identification requirements and policies. That's very important. You also want to consider where and when you want to send your scores to an institution and what that institution's admission deadlines are. You need to make sure you allow enough time for your scores to reach them in a timely manner so that you are presenting a full and complete application for admission. You'll want to create a MyGRE account. Remember, your name must exactly match that as it appears on your official documents. You also, at the point of pre-registration, can indicate that you do want to participate in the GRE Search service so that way you can find out about institutions and graduate programs that appeal to you in locations you maybe had not yet thought of, or in programs that you had not yet considered. Then you can go ahead and register for the GRE Revised General Test. You want to select your test date based on the admission deadlines of the institutions you're interested in. So if you're looking at 5 schools, you want to figure out which school has the earliest admission deadline. Make sure that your scores are available before that deadline, and then you will automatically meet the deadline of the other schools whose time frame is later. Now, let's look a little bit closer at what goes into creating your MyGRE account. Understandably, it's going to contain your information, your name, first name, last name, middle initial if you choose to use it. You'll notice there's no asterisk next to that because it's not a required field. There are some fields that are very important and have to be filled in. Those are marked with the asterisk. Oh, and excuse me, I'm noticing a question coming in that I forgot to mention, that I'm going to take your questions about the Revised General Test at the end of our presentation because there's so much information that will be helpful to you, and I want to make sure that we get a chance to go through it all. So thank you for your patience and bearing with me. You may still submit your questions, and later, as I said, I will go through them and answer them in order. So also in creating your MyGRE account, we're going to ask for your country of residence, contact information, your email address, your phone number, because again, it's a way to make sure that we can reach out to you and provide you with any information that would be important to know about your test center or upcoming events. Then, once you've created that registration profile on that previous screen, you'll be presented with this screen and the chance to register for a test. But you'll also notice there are some other options on this screen. For example, you can manage your profile You could update your contact information if you change your email address, as many students do. Or if it's a case where you want to learn about our test preparation under quick links, you can access that. So this is a very helpful screen that will come up to you. Okay, here we are. So forgive me, I had advanced the slide and I'm waiting for the computer to catch up to me. Okay. You want to, on test day, get to the test center early. You want to make sure that you have your identification documentation with you. You want to make sure that, again, you also have your admission ticket for the test day, and realize that at the start of the test, we will ask you to secure your personal belongings so that they do not come into the test room with you. Remember, the test itself will contain all the information you need to take it, including an online calculator. Now let's look a little deeper at the test itself, the way it's broken down. Most of the students who are taking the GRE general test for admission for university study are taking the computer-based test. And if that's the case, looking at this example here, you can see that it contains 3 sections. Analytical writing, which is our essay section of the test. That always presents to you as soon as you sit down at the computer. It's the first section. It is 1 section in its entirety, but it does contain 2 essays that you'll have to write. You're given 30 minutes per essay or task to write that response. The next section, or sections I should say, will be verbal reasoning or quantitative reasoning. And the way that the test is structured, you might actually receive 2 verbal sections immediately and then 2 quant sections, but another test taker in the same lab may receive a verbal section first, followed by a quant section or quantitative section, followed by another verbal and the other quantitative section. So the order after the essays is random, but everyone will have 2 sections of verbal reasoning and 2 sections of quantitative reasoning, as you can see here. In the case of the verbal reasoning, there will be 20 questions per section, and they're multiple choice, and you'll have 30 minutes to complete each verbal section. In the case of the quantitative reasoning section, or the math section, you will find that you have 2 sections of quantitative reasoning to answer as a part of the test, 20 questions in each section, and 35 minutes in each section to complete answering all of those questions. So now as we look at screen, you'll see that here we get a little bit deeper to talk about the way that the test is structured. So using the information from the previous slide, the approximate total testing time for you would be roughly 3 hours and 45 minutes. That would include, or in addition to, I should say, we would be adding our timed breaks. It is recommended that you focus on the timed breaks and take advantage of those just to regroup and refocus yourself. As I mentioned before, the analytical writing or the essay questions are always first. Then you could have 2 verbal reasoning and 2 quantitative reasoning sections. You should also be aware, though, that either an unscored section or a research section might appear as part of your test. If that's the case, neither would count towards your score. So you could not be penalized if you got a question wrong, nor could you be helped if you got a question right. Instead, when we have an unscored section, you'll never know which one it is, but we recommend that you do try to do your very best in it. And in the case of the research section, we know that that will always be the last section that you'll see, and it will be clearly identified. This additional information helps us create excellent test questions on upcoming tests for students who will be taking the GRE Revised General Test in the future. All right, I mentioned before that students will be given breaks during the course of the testing. There are 2 official breaks. It is recommended that you focus on the scheduled breaks because if you step away from your computer on an unscheduled break, you will realize that the clock, the test clock, will not stop. So while you're away from the computer, questions are appearing on the screen, you're losing time that you cannot get back, and therefore you may miss the chance to answer some of the questions. So the official breaks, of which there are 2, the first is a 10-minute break that comes after the 3rd section of the test, whatever section you have. The reason for that 10-minute break is it allows you, the test taker, to use the facilities, possibly to sharpen a pencil, get more scratch paper if you use the scratch paper we provided you at the start of the test, but also, again, it is an opportunity to make sure that you're focused on the test. At the end of that 10th minute, the test will restart. So you must be seated back at your computer because we cannot stop the clock. There's also one additional 1-minute break between the other sections. And that 1-minute break does give you the opportunity, again, just to stop, catch your breath, and refocus. As I mentioned before, you might want to schedule or replenish your scratch paper during the scheduled break. When we talk about the analytical writing or essay part of the test, we're focusing then in evaluating your critical thinking and analytical writing skills. There are 2 writing tasks or essays. The first is that we ask you to analyze an issue. The second is that we ask you to analyze an argument. Essay responses are to be typed on your computer. It's not a situation where we're going to score your scratch paper or even refer to it. In fact, we destroy that at the end of your test day. So your answer to the essay has to be typed on the computer. You'll have the ability to use the basic typing and editing functions that are built into the computer, but you will not be able to access any outside software or websites to assist you. Now, when we talk about the verbal reasoning section, in that case, we are trying to evaluate your ability to understand what you read and how you apply those reasoning skills to that matter. So some question types that help us assess that would be multiple choice questions, some where you will have only one possible answer to choose out of the 4 or 5 options. Another would be multiple choice questions, but with more than one answer that you have to choose and identify as the correct answer. And then the last type of question in this particular section would be the select in passage. And that would allow you to highlight text that is part of the reading material that serves as the answer to the question you're being asked. Text completion, which is just that. A sentence will begin. We'll ask you to finish it off with the appropriate ending. There will be sentence equivalents to make sure that things match and agree. Now, as we look at the quantitative reasoning section, again, this is the 3rd of the 3 sections. It is our math section. And here we're evaluating your ability to interpret and analyze quantitative information and solve problems using mathematical models. The question types include quantitative comparison, and that means looking at charts and comparing the data. There'll be 2 types of multiple choice questions, one where there's only one possible answer that we're asking you for, and another where there could be one or more possible correct answers that we'll ask of you. And the last question type would be numeric entry. In the case of this entire quantitative section, we're focusing on the basic mathematical skills and elementary mathematical concepts of arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. There is no higher level math that's a part of the test. So for students who are not pursuing a very math-oriented discipline, we still can get a sense of your abilities to analyze quantitative information and solve problems. Now, as we look at the verbal reasoning and quantitative reasonings, I think it's important for you to understand that as multiple choice sections, they are section level adaptive. And what that means is that the computer selects the second section of that measure, whether it's the verbal reasoning or the quantitative reasoning, based on how you did in your performance in the first verbal or first quantitative reasoning section. Within a section, all of the questions contribute equally to your final score. Every single one is worth 1 point. Both sections are important though, since the final score on each measure, the verbal reasoning as a whole or the quantitative reasoning as a whole, the final score is based on the total number of answers you got correct and the level of difficulty of the questions in that section. So that's what we mean by section level adaptive. So the Mythbuster is that many times students will say to us, oh, well, you know, I'm sure that you're going to subtract for questions I got wrong. Well, that's not true. We do not penalize students if they skip a question or give us an incorrect answer. Instead, you only get a point towards your score when you get the question right. So it never hurts to try and answer all the questions. And it's always better to give an answer and as a guess than to leave it blank. So a good way to approach the test that we recommend is to know your own personal test-taking strategy. Everybody's different. Are you a person who likes to answer the questions in the order as they appear? Or do you like to answer the questions you know right away and then come back to the ones that you're not sure of so you can spend a bit more time thinking about it? Or do you have another strategy entirely? All of them are fair and understandable and positive ways to take a test, but you need to know what works best for you. When we talk about that test taker friendly design, it actually is our way of allowing you to use your own strategy, what works best for you to your greatest advantage. So with other graduate level admissions tests, they require you to answer each question in the order it's presented. You cannot go back to see if you answered everything, and you cannot go ahead to see what's coming. We decided when we created the revised general test that we wanted to make sure that our test takers could move freely within a section. You would be able to look back at questions you've already answered to make sure that you did pick the correct one. You could skip a question in a section and come back to it before you leave the section. You can flag or mark a question so that you can come back to it and remember that you have not yet answered it. Or you can even just change your answers, which allows you to have a more test taker friendly experience. Now, when we look a little bit closer at what exactly we do to help that experience be so friendly towards you, it refers to the buttons at the top of the screen when you take the test, in the case of the quantitative and the verbal reasoning sections. You'll find that you'll be able to skip questions or change your answers. You can move freely within a section. You will be able to mark, as I indicated, with a check, the questions you want to come back to. You can use the help button because the help information does vary between what you see in the verbal section versus what kind of help you would get in the quantitative section. You'll find that if you click that calculator button in the quantitative section only, it does bring up the on-screen calculator that you can use throughout that section of the test. But you'll also find that most of the questions in the quantitative reasoning section don't require a calculator at all. So if you don't need it, certainly you don't have to have it visible, but the choice is yours. Now, some quick tips and strategies that I think will be helpful. You want to make sure that you do not waste any time by focusing all your attention on very difficult questions. No question carries any greater weight than any other, so don't try to imagine a difficulty level that's not there. Instead, throughout the test, focus on answering the questions as best you can. Utilize that review screen so that way you can look at the questions you've had in that section to see if you skipped any, if you answered all of them, if you still have some that are marked and need your attention. Use it before you leave to make sure you've answered all those questions, because as we've said, you only get a point towards your score if you get the question correct. So it's better to answer them all. Now, in the next question or section here, we need to emphasize the score scale as we go forward so that you'll understand what you'll see on your final results. The analytical writing section, the 2 essay questions, are scored in half-point increments with a low of 0 and a high of 6. In the case of the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning, they are scored in 1-point increments, which means 130, 131, 132. And it also means that we have a low score of 130 up to a high of 170. That's different, obviously, than the analytical writing, which is half-point increments. And I neglected to explain that that means you could get an essay score of a 4.5 or a 4 or a 5. Now, with that information under our belt as to what to expect in the score scale, let's talk about what you see on test day when it comes to your scores. After you've completed taking the GRE Revised General Test, you will have an option to either cancel your scores permanently or report or view your unofficial scores. Canceling your scores permanently does just that. You will not see your scores at the end of your test session that day, nor ever again in the future. If you do want to see your scores at the end of the test that day and have the option of being able to share them with institutions you're applying to, then you want to report your unofficial scores. In doing so, you'll see the scores for just the multiple choice sections, so the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning. And that's because the computer can score those for you and give you an estimate. You then can decide at that time not to send your scores to any institution if you haven't made up your mind to where you're going to apply, or you can take advantage of our score select option and decide to send your scores to an official institution. The choice again is yours. Let's talk a little bit more about that though. When you get to the end of the test, this is what you'll see. This screen will appear, unofficial GRE Revised General Test Scores, and it's letting you know this is, again, your unofficial scores, and therefore could be subject to change. But you'll see there's a result for the verbal reasoning on that scale from 130 to 170, and there's also a result from the quantitative reasoning from to 170. 130 to 170 is the score scale for both sections. So that would then let you know where you stand. And we do remind you on the screen as well that your official scores should be available in your MyGRE account online within 10 to 15 days after taking the test. At that time, what you'll see on your account will also include your actual score for your analytical writing or your essay section. Now, when it comes to getting your official scores, or the scores that you want to send to the university, as well as your own copy, there are certain things we want you to be aware of. As I just said, your scores, your official scores, will be reported in your MyGRE account online roughly 10 to 15 days after you take the revised general test. Those scores will be valid and a part of your history for 5 years from the day you take the test. You will always see all of the scores that are valid for you in a 5-year time period whenever you go in to look at your MyGRE account. From your own computer, you can actually print off your copy of your scores if you wish. Sometimes students like to have a printed copy. It helps them. Or it might be information they can use while they're filling out their online applications for the graduate programs they're considering. You also have the option of sending, or ordering, I should say, additional score reports by sending your scores to an institution after the test. So it could be later that same day, it could be 3 weeks later, or 4 years later. But so long as it's not during the test administration, we consider it after the test day. And with Score Select, you can decide which scores from your entire valid 5-year score report history you are sharing with the school. So this is what it would look like when you go into your MyGRE account. This example student that we're using has taken the test more than once. In fact, you can see that they have scores for the verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and analytical writing. And you can also see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different test dates. So that's information that you didn't have before. But you, as the test taker, can see all of that because this will be your record. Now, in using the Score Select option, what you'll then do is look at all of the scores that you have present, and you'll be able to pick a test date, the scores from a single test date or multiple test dates to send with an institution. It's a great way to give you confidence in your ability to present your best possible self and set of scores to the institutions to which you're applying. So if it's a case where you want to send the scores that you only want a school to see, you can do so using Score Select. So on test day, the way to do it would be to take advantage of the fact that every GRE Revised General Test taker is able to send their scores to 4 institutions for free, no matter what. So in doing that, you can choose to send your most recent scores, which would be the scores from that day that you're sitting in the testing room, or you can choose to send all of the scores that you have that are valid from that 5-year period. So if you took the test twice before, plus today, you'd have 3 scores. So you can either send just the scores from today or the scores from all 3 dates. If you're using Score Select after the test day, and again, remember that means as much as later that same day, all the way to 4 years later, 5 years later. If you're doing it in that time frame, then you have 3 choices instead of just 2. You can send your most recent set of test scores, which would be the date closest to the day you're living in. You could send all of your scores that are valid in that 5-year time period. But the other choice that you have only after test day is to send any scores. And what that means is, again, in our example, we said you've taken the test 3 times. You could choose to send your scores from your second attempt and your third attempt only, or you could choose to send the scores from your first attempt and your third attempt, or your second and your first, or just your second set of scores. So therefore, you're choosing any. You'll indicate which ones you want, but you want to make up the choice of which of the 3 dates you're sending yourself. Now, as we move forward, there are things to keep in mind. The benefit of using this score select option is that it gives you greater confidence in the scores that you're presenting because you know you're sending your highest performance. It also gives you the opportunity to decide which set of scores you're sending to which institution in case you're applying to more than one. You have that ability to use flexibility in making up your decision. Now, if you choose to take the test more than once, and many of our test takers do, then certainly Score Select is the best option for you. Obviously, if you've only taken the test once, those are the scores you're going to send. But if you take it more than once, please know that means that you can take it or retest as frequently as every 21 days. So that means that you can do it up to a maximum of 5 times within a continuous rolling 12-month period. So, for example, if this is the month of March, between now and the end of April 2015, you would be able to take the GRE Revised General Test a total of 5 times. So keep that in mind if you're trying to plan out your application process and allow yourself time to test and meet those admission deadlines. We have official test prep because we want to make sure that you have confidence in your performance on the test as well. So we use our free test prep as a way to help you understand what the test is like, how it's designed, but also so that that way you will feel connected to your experience and know what to expect. So the best resources we have are often our free ones. Looking first at our PowerPrep 2 software, it includes 2 full-length practice tests. The benefit of that is you can take one cold without any preparation first, see how you perform, then work to improve the areas where you're weak. Then, closer to your actual test day, you can take that second practice test and watch and see how much you've improved in that time that you spent working on your weak areas. Some students who are going to be taking the revised general test already know from their academic history that they tend to have a weakness in math. We offer 2 free math prep options for you. One is Math Review, and the other is Math Conventions. For those of you who have not necessarily studied basic math for a while, you will be able to utilize these to become familiar with the appropriate equations and problems that you'll see on the test, as well as how to figure those out. We also offer other test prep that students find advantageous. And in this case, these are preparation materials that you can buy from us. We do try to keep the prices down because we know that it's important for students to be able to take advantage of help when they can. So we offer the GRE Success Starter series, and those are great tips and tools and strategies for either the test overall or for specific sections of the test. As you can see here, the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning. We also offer, through our publisher McGraw-Hill, the official guide to the GRE Revised General Test, 2nd edition. And that includes full-length practice tests as well. We have a $4.99 mobile app. That's the official guide. So it's the same information as in the book I just discussed. The book itself is available both as an e-book or electronic book or as a physical paper book, and that retails at $35. We also have Score It Now, which is a wonderful way for you to practice your essay writing in a timed format. For many students, being able to write a very strong essay in a short period of time is a weakness they want to practice and work on. So we offer that as well. Some students have found that as they prepare for the GRE, they like to work with their peers, friends who are also taking the test. And perhaps your friend circle is a little bit broader than just your neighborhood coffee shop. We like to say that we can help you reach everyone who's going to be taking the test by utilizing our GRE Revised General Test page that's on our Facebook and on our Sina Weibo accounts. Both allow you to connect with your peers who are preparing and discuss some tips and things that they have found as great resources as they gear up to do well on the Revised General Test. To sum it all up, you'll find that you're going to get the greatest power of confidence in the GRE by taking it and being prepared for it, but also making sure that you practice and take advantage of the free test prep that we offer. We want you to present the best possible image to your future graduate and business schools. So remember that the GRE Revised General Test is a test taker friendly test. It helps you produce the best scores possible when you take advantage of the score select option and send the scores that you feel give you great confidence. In order to do that, you will need to take the test more than once. And again, remember, you can take the test once every 21 days for a maximum of 5 times. You'll also find that all of the information that we've covered today can be located at the takethegre.com website should you wish to go back over it. At this point, I'd like to turn now to some of the questions that you've written in so that way we can address those concerns. Let's see here. One of the questions that's come in is, how much does the GRE Revised General Test cost to take? The current worldwide price for the GRE Revised General Test is $185 US. And that's true again around the world, no matter where you're taking it. We have some people who are, a person who is asking, is there a way to order more than one test prep item? Yes. When you go online to the takethegre.com website, you can actually order any and all of the priced test prep that we have available. You can also order, free of charge, the math review, math conventions, and the power prep 2. All of those are available 24 hours a day on the website. I have another question. Let's see here. Okay, when will my schools receive my scores? Well, the GRE test scores are available in your registration profile for you within 10 or 15 days after taking the test. And if you listed a university or an institution to receive your scores, then they also will be able to get their scores sent out to them in that 10 to 15 day period. You obviously need to allow a little bit of time for it to go through the mail. And if it's going to be sent to an institution outside your country, you definitely need to allow time for that. Let's see here. I wanted to bring up another slide because one of the questions is, can I address for you any questions about the GRE subject test? Well, I'm happy to tell you that we do offer 7 different subject tests. These are tests that are focused on, as you can imagine, certain disciplines to show your level of knowledge and extensive background in just those majors. So usually a graduate school or a program will specifically ask you to take a subject test in one of these 7 areas that you see on screen. The paper-based tests are given just 3 times a year. GRE paper-based subject tests can be taken in September, October, and April. You can get more information at the website you see here about those tests. And again, certainly if you're not sure if the university or graduate program you're considering requires it, reach out to them. Go to their website, contact them, and find out if you do need to take the time out to schedule a GRE subject test. I have a student who's also asking about the PPI because they see it on screen. The ETS Personal Potential Index is not a test, but instead it is a supplement to your application for admission to graduate school. What it does is it allows you the opportunity to have those who are writing an evaluation or a recommendation letter on your behalf discuss and cite your skills and abilities in 6 critical strength areas that graduate school deans have told us are essential to demonstrate the ability to not only succeed at graduate school, but to persist to getting your degree. The 6 areas that would be highlighted are listed here: knowledge and creativity, teamwork, planning and organization, communication skills, resilience, ethics, and integrity. For the folks who are writing your recommendation letters, they'll be able to answer 4 questions in each of those 6 areas. And if they want, they can provide commentary on ways in which you have demonstrated those skills. That additional information can bolster your application for graduate school. Some of the programs that you're looking at might even recommend or require the submission of the ETS Personal Potential Index, or ETS PPI. If that's the case, again, you can find out either directly from the university's website or by contacting them. You want to make sure that you allow enough time for both your evaluations and your standardized test scores to reach the programs in time for admission. Let's see here. I have time for a few more questions. Um, Here's one. I'm a graduate student from Senegal and majoring in English. Do I need the GRE to get into a community college in the US to enroll in a political science or business program? Actually, you won't need the GRE test. The main reason is because the GRE, or Revised General Test, is what's used for students who are seeking to get a master's degree or a doctorate degree. For students who are searching or desiring to come into the community college, that for us is actually the start of your university studies or your bachelor's or entry level degree. So the GRE test is not necessary for a community college. I hope that information is helpful to you, and good luck to you in your process. Um, I should also mention again, too, for that student and for any of you who are considering coming to another country to do your graduate study, if you're uncertain who has the programs you're interested in, you will want to take advantage of the GRE Search service. Again, it's a free service for you. You'll receive communications from different universities and graduate programs around the world that offer the discipline you're interested in, and therefore might expose you to opportunities to study and or receive fellowships in countries you hadn't even thought of before. Let's see here if I can find any other questions coming in. Okay. Can I receive my official GRE scores by mail from you? That's a good question. Up until a year ago, GRE did send paper copies to test takers for their score reports. But what we found was that in this day and age of technology, most of our test takers didn't need their own personal copy printed. So we decided instead to make the GRE score report information that you'll see in your MyGRE account available for you to print off yourself at home or at a printing center in a local computer facility. That allows you to print on demand whenever you need to or want to. And again, you would be printing the scores that are valid in your profile for the 5-year time span. Okay, so here's another question. Can test takers change the date or location of their test? Yes, you can do that up to 4 days before your test date. And if you fail to do it up to 4 days before, then you end up forfeiting or losing your test fee. It will not be refunded. So not showing up and not notifying us is not a wise option. Do go ahead and try and change your appointment as soon as you can when you realize you need to. But let's say, for example, your test appointment is on a Saturday. Then ideally, you should be changing your test date no later than that prior Tuesday of that same week. That allows you plenty of time to get the change made, as well as get information on a new admission ticket. All right. I have time for just one more question. Let's see here. And actually, before I take it, I should tell you, if there's any reason that I was unable to get to your question today in our time together, please do write to us. You can send your emails to gre-info@ets.org. We're available to answer your questions at any time that way. gre-info@ets.org. Oh, and I have a question here. Is the official mobile app available for, I guess the word you meant to type was Android phones? You can use it for Apple products, yes. And we are in the process of making one available for those who have Android or Windows phones. So it's just a matter of time. But do watch our website, and we'll make the announcement there. I want to thank you for spending the time with me today as part of the College Week Live Test Prep Week and learning a bit more about the GRE Revised General Test. I do wish you the best of luck on behalf of the GRE program, and I'm sure that by taking advantage of our test preparation materials, both those that are free and those for purchase, you will be able to have the best possible performance and confidence in the scores that you present to your graduate and business schools. Thank you.